Well, hello and welcome to the Trusted Podcast. My name is Blake Johnson. I'm your host, and I've got Catherine Cantey, is that how I say it?
Yes,
On the
thank you.
podcast today, and really excited about it. So, Catherine, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Blake. I really appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to speaking and learning today.
Okay, great. Well, let's start off. Give a little bit of background about yourself, and what makes you the trusted expert in your field.
Thank you for the question. I spent more than 20 years in banking, commercial banking primarily, traveling around the country, helping other people grow their business. Being in banking allowed me to be introduced to a lot of different businesses because everybody needs money, they need funding. And a lot of times I was in the room with the CEOs and with the decision makers because if you're going to change banks or you're going to choose which bank is going to lead you through a transition, you're going to have decision makers in the room and you need to be a sounding board, listen to what their true needs are, what their struggles are, and work with them to help accomplish their goals. And that's always been something that's been near and dear to my heart is helping other people succeed. And as I climbed through the corporate ladder, and I was given a lot of incredible opportunities that I'm forever grateful for. I had a lot of sponsors and people that believed in me over the years, so I appreciate it. And I got to the point where I wanted to do more and continue to learn and continue to reach out and to help people. So a few years ago, I reached out to Marshall Goldsmith, who I've always used his books in my own career. And the process had worked for me countless times. And I thought, what a great way to get to work with Marshall. I applied to an application process that I was selected to be one of the 50 people to work with him in New York. I flew up there. I loved him in person. I loved the people that I was with. And it just kind of sealed the deal that I wanted to get into leadership coaching. And leadership coaching is something that is needed, I think, everywhere. We need more leaders. We don't just need managers with long titles. We need to delegate more. We need to empower more people. If we have a good team that works for us, our goals and our accomplishments can be unlimited. So you work with a lot of business owners. If you've got a good leadership team in place, truly these businesses can take on the world. And as we're seeing today, things have slowed down over the past year, but some businesses are really excelling and they've got a strong leadership team in place. So about a year ago, I went out and after I got certified with stakeholder centered coaching, and it's coaching that's not for everybody. And I've learned that just working through different with people over the past year. You've got to have the courage, the discipline, and the humility to be able to receive the feedback from others that you're working on a certain leadership trait. And I worked with about 20 people this past year. All within 90 days, I sent out a mini survey to the individuals that I'm working with and their stakeholders, their peers that are around them. They need to say whether or not they see improvement. And 100% of the people that I've been working with have actually received improvement as recognized by their peers and by their stakeholders. And a lot of people don't have the courage to step up and say, I'm working on this behavior trait and I want to get better. What are one or two things I can do to go in a better direction? And it's hard and it sounds so simple. I joke that common sense is not common practice. And there's a lot of good information if we're willing to listen to it, and you've got to have the courage to be able to do that. So 20 years in banking has transitioned into this. It's led to other opportunities. So I don't just talk about leadership, but I actually helped bring in a facilitated talk where it resulted in a $12 million investment for our community to help close the broadband gap. So a lot of this is just being willing to listen to what the struggling moments are, ask for people to come and to be able to help, and create small wins along the way. So it's been a gift to been given this opportunity.
And I think the biggest thing that I see over and over again is, there's plenty of information out there. We're inundated with information. It's who has the courage to take action. I really like that you brought that up because it really is, anybody can go online, find the information that they could possibly need for it, but, who's going to go and actually implement what they learn and do it. And that, like you said, it does take a lot of courage to do that. So speaking of courage and things that people need to fix, what are your top two things that you've seen over and over again with business owners that they just don't do?
Gosh, I feel like the overall obvious thing is they don't ask their existing customers how they can help them solve their struggles. How can you be of a better service to your existing customers? And as a banker that I serve the agriculture and the rural communities around the United States, I spent 7 years on the road, and my job was to go sit in boardrooms and be with board of directors and listen to what the true needs are in that community, and to also know that the services that we're providing to that local bank, where the technology and the funding, were they being met? Were those needs being met by the home bank, by the funding bank, the service provider? And to me, it just feels like it's so obvious. Let's just ask people, do you like text? Do you like emails? Do you like phone calls? Do you prefer mornings and afternoons for discussions? When is your best thinking time? When can we strategize about what your future holds? How can I listen to what your true needs are and what your struggling needs are? And is there a way for me to help solve? And if I can't solve it, then let's be honest and just say that's not in the world that I can solve, but I know of other people that I can refer you to. I can't solve it, but I've got XYZ over here that might be able to be a temporary solution. If I had to summarize it, I know you asked for two, but I really think that the number one overarching thing for businesses is asking their existing customers how they can provide better value to them.
What's the best way for those business owners to ask that? Is it when they're in the in-person meeting? Is it sending out the follow-up surveys? Is it all the above? What's kind of your feel for the best way to accomplish that?
So I just spoke with some Clemson University students as they're heading out into the workforce, and they asked for some takeaway information. And I shared with them a very basic, keep it simple for them so everybody can remember this. And this is just something that we've always been taught in banking, and I'm sure other startup businesses. But it's a 2-2-2 process. And you want to follow up with someone 2 days after you have a meeting with them to recap everything that you had discussed during the meeting. So proactively reach out to them, summarize it. If you prefer a phone call or an email, find out what they like and put it in writing. A lot of people are too scared to, and I know, as an attorney, you're probably like, ooh, be careful what you put in writing. But truly, if you're serving the customer and you're meeting their needs, take that step and document it, because that's going to be your trail to be able to make sure you're meeting their expectations. So take a few minutes, put some bullet points together, but after 2 days, follow back up in 2 weeks, regardless of whether or not you actually have closure to that project. I have countless times reached out to CEOs and said, I don't have the answer that you need. I'm still working on it. I just need another week. Very few people take that proactive response at 2 weeks just to give a response and say, hey, I don't know, but I can keep working on this. The third two is going to be in 2 months. The world is changing so fast right now. If you follow back up with somebody at 2 months, things have changed, struggles have changed. The world completely changed within the first 2 months of this year. So try the 2-2-2 process: 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months. Be proactive. And another lesson that I like to share with the students and clients is lead with value and don't lead with a want. So, how can you help solve their pain or help put some struggles at ease? And proactively send them information, articles, bullet points of summary items that you think that they could find of benefit. Don't start with I want more business. Start with, how can I help you solve your leadership troubles, or how can I solve your trust that you're being set up right now for your family and for your future? How can I make this easy for you? And what are one or two things that maybe we could accomplish on this quick phone call that can move us in the right direction?
Okay. I like that, and I will say the attorney side in me actually does say put it in writing, because that'll protect you down the road. Because while it's fresh and everybody agrees, put down what you want, because especially dealing with business owners, and I help a lot of business owners set up their new businesses, and when the partners are setting it up, everybody's happy, they're on the right side, they're agreeing to everything. That's when you want to put everything in writing, because when things go sour down the road, we can refer back to that. No, this is what we actually said. This is what we agreed to. So, yeah, put it in writing. This is what I'm going to help you with. This is what I can do, and it'll actually protect you down the road. So I'm opposite on that.
Well, I appreciate that, and we've been in countless partnerships over the years, and LLCs and businesses. My husband's very much an entrepreneur, and I've been, the steady provider through the bank, and now I've branched off. I guess 20 years of watching him do it. I'm like, look, I'm ready to disrupt and to go out there. And so part of that is, okay, if this LLC fails, let's just go ahead and have a plan. How are we going to exit out of this in the event that somebody should happen to die unexpectedly? I mean, I don't want to go deal with all kinds of countless family members that are not, because the structure's not there. So
Yeah,
let's just go ahead and design the breakup while everybody's happy. Let's just say worst case scenario. Okay, if we end up with this, what am I going to do? How am I going to hold this bag and figure out what to do with it next? I need a plan. And things change so much. I probably irritate a few people around here, and I'm like, look, I need a new plan about every 2 years because assets are coming and going, and the world's changing, and I don't know what worked then is still going to work in 2 years. So I'm a big believer in planning, and just like you said, put it in writing. Let's get a game plan, and let's talk about how we're going to get out of this, and while things are still good and going well, because that's when everybody's still talking.
oh man, if I could have you in every client meeting, that'd be great. Yeah, that's what I preach over and over again. You're all happy now. This is when you want to get in, because yeah, nobody wants to be in partnership with their partner's ex-spouse, or
Oh,
or
who
the
wants
kids or whatever.
Oh, I know. You start looking at people that you're doing business with, and I'm like, I love that person. But what happens when that person leaves? I don't really want to work with the spouse or the
Yeah,
kids, or the kids are underage. And then you're kind of like, oh, goodness, we don't have a plan in place. I'm all
yeah,
about business continuity, and let's figure out what's the temporary plan and then what's going to be the long term plan.
yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, that's what I do. So I love that part of it. And it's same thing on a personal side. Your trust and your living estate plan. It's called a living trust for a reason. It changes. It morphs. Your plan changes. You need to keep up on that stuff.
I
All
think
right.
when we got straight out of school, could just go ahead and get a will set up, get the basics done, go ahead and write it down. It's so inexpensive and so not time consuming to have that protection put in place in the East, to have that in place. So,
Yeah. It's peace of mind as well.
yeah.
All right. Well, we could talk about that all day. Let's talk about leadership. So, what are the two things that a leader can do that's going to help give them the best return for their time investment, the biggest bang for their buck for these two things they could implement?
Yeah, so a process that we have in place is ask, listen, thank, and it's about asking your stakeholders, the peers around you, what are one or two things that I can do better going forward, and listen to what the stakeholder, what the peers are going to say, and write it down or listen to them carefully. Don't judge them. Don't say, oh, that's a great idea, or oh, I've tried that, or that's a bad idea, because the third or fourth idea that they come up with could actually be something that's doable. And then the last step is just to say thank you. And I think a lot of people have a hard time doing that. And the thank you part is to be genuine and not promise anything, but go back and think about what they had to say. So ask, listen, thank is a great process to use. But if you truly want to deliver on results, the follow up, going back to your stakeholder, going back to your peers that you truly want to have them see you in a new light, when you follow back up with them and explain what did you try to do, what happened, and what are you going to do going forward, that's gold. So few people actually go back to the stakeholder and say, I appreciate you sharing these one or two things that I could do to improve my executive presence, to improve my delegation, my communication, whatever behaviors they want to work on, and say, this is what I learned. And it's a forced reflection process, and you're going back to these peers, and you want to change the way that they see you. And the only way to do that is through consistent follow up. So, asking, listening, and thanking is the first part. The second part is following back up with your stakeholder. to be able to let them know that you tried it, because you're going to gain their trust when you follow back up.
Yeah, I mean, if you show that you can actually do something, it's going to give you opportunities to do more work, because those who get stuff done are the ones who are going to be rewarded with more responsibility, more opportunities to advance, and so on. So I think that's very key. All right. How does someone determine when they need a coach? Whether it's on the executive side, on the business side, whatever. What's kind of your steps of when you think somebody's ready to kind of implement that?
They definitely have to know with themselves if they're willing to put in the work. So they've got to be able to have that feeling inside that, okay, today's the day we're actually going to do it. And a lot of times people do a lot of talking and they don't do a lot of doing. And I can't force somebody to do this type of work. So it has to be ingrained in their DNA that they're proactively looking to improve. We've all tried working with people that we see a lot of hope and promise, and you see this potential, but if they don't have it and they don't want it, it's just going to be a waste of my time and a waste of their time. So the individuals that this process works for coaching is definitely going to be for those high potential managers that are looking to take their career to the next level. A lot of times, these are people heading into the C suite that I'm working with. And it can also be used in the C suite, because what got you into that C suite may still, may not be exactly what you need to keep working on. And the communication skills that you had at the entry level may have gotten you to a great management position. And then you knew you had to get to a delegation point in order to excel. And once you're back into that CEO position, you've got to get back to communicating and understanding and listening and working on those skills. So it's got to be somebody who's willing to step up to the plate. These are going to be your high potential leaders within an organization that you want to retain, that you want to invest in, because your business is going to depend on whether or not this person is going to proactively improve or not. So the high potential performers are the ones that are going to best receive this information.
Is there like a threshold as far as, let's say, from a business owner standpoint, they've owned their own business for whatever, however long, but they're starting to get employees. Is there a certain number of employees they should have before they'd look at it? Should they be doing a certain amount of revenue or anything like that?
No, so you could have some of the fastest growing businesses right now, and they could be a candidate for this. They could have 20 employees or less. I was talking to a startup company in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they have about 7 people that are there for the startup. They want to build a stronger team, and they need to accelerate their communication skills if they're going to continue to accelerate the business growth. And so working with them is going to be key on communication within the team. I've worked with financial institutions, so you've worked with 100-year-old banks, and they have high potential leaders in there. And what works for one bank may not work for another. Some of them are very satisfied with their results that they get year in and year out, and that's perfectly fine. But when you have leaders that acknowledge that we've got to have a stronger team, where they want to invest in the team to retain this top talent, this is a way to proactively be able to do that. So it works whether you're in small business, or it works if you're going to be, in a larger financial or larger institution that's out there.
Okay. How should somebody go about choosing their coach? What attributes should they be looking at? What are the key things? I mean, when you were looking for your coach,
Mhm.
what things drew you to him, and what was the big thing the few key things that you really looked and keyed on?
When I found my coach, it was word of mouth through referral. And I knew I didn't need a leadership coach. I needed a business coach. I needed somebody who could help me transition from corporate into solopreneurism. So I found somebody who specialized in that. They happened to be in the same state, which is just a fluke, because she's working with people all over the country. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to find somebody, but they're going to be not in your backyard, and you're going to have to take that leap of faith. You need to have the phone calls, you need to have the Zoom calls, you need to test the waters. Do an entry session and see if the personalities fit. And there's a big difference between this life coaching and leadership coaching and business coaching. There's so many different coaches out there. You really need to identify what is your goal in the short term and the long term, and then kind of reverse engineer into that coach that you think that you need.
Okay. What about qualifications? Are there any qualifications people should be looking for when they go look for a coach?
Personally, I go for results. I need to see results. And if that means you read 100 plus leadership books and that's your qualification, or you spent 20 years in design work for creating training platforms, and I wanted to hire you to figure out how to do a training platform. I'm looking for results. Who's going to deliver the results? Where are the qualifications as far as like the testimonies, the people that you've worked with? Have you helped them succeed at their goals? I'm very much into not just the titles and the initials, but personally for me, I need to see what the results are and what the references are showing.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's, have you actually done what I want you to help me do? You know, yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice to read it in theory, but have you actually performed and done the same thing I'm doing? Because that's what I'm looking for when I hire somebody. And it was interesting, I think, that you said your referral, because just about every guest I've had on the podcast, when we talk about how can they find somebody like you, what things do they look for, word of mouth is usually one of the first things that comes up. And even though we do all this advertising, all this marketing, and everything else, word of mouth still is the most powerful thing that you can do. So your reputation, how you act, is going to have such a big impact on what kind of clients you get, and it's going to result in better clients, easier sales, and so on. And it interests me every time, no matter what industry we're in, that usually comes out as as one of the top things.
It's funny how that works. We're all spending all this money on ads everywhere, and really, we just need to go talk to our existing network, see how we can help them, see if they know somebody else who's having the same pain, share with them how you're able to solve that problem. And it's funny how business can roll in. You treat people right and you deliver the result, and it will lead to more business.
Okay. Well, that's all I had for questions. Is there anything else we missed as far as leadership or coaching that you think our listeners really need to know?
I think that's a great question. I think things that we're just missing in general today are just being able to show up authentically, be who you are just going to be extremely important, even as we head into the to just different events throughout the year. People show up, but they show up with their cell phone. I think there's a lot of gold when you can walk in a room and have a conversation and look at people. Also, I think and the following up process is going to continue to be important. Say what you're going to do, what you say you're going to do, and be sure to follow back up with people. And then the last thing is be able to lead with value. Don't lead with what you want out of the relationship, but lead with how you can help someone. So definitely show up, follow up, and lead with value.
Perfect. Well, how can our listeners get in touch with you if they want to reach out and take advantage of your expertise?
Thank you. LinkedIn is very easy to find me. You can find me, Catherine Cantey. Also, my website is CatherineCantey.com. So just CatherineCantey.com, or go to LinkedIn and type in my name, Catherine Cantey.
Okay, and I'll make sure I put that in the podcast notes so that it's easy to find and click on. Well, Catherine, I really appreciate you being on the show today. I think there's been a lot of value given. Since you said lead with value, I think you've done exemplified that. So thank you so much for all you had to share today.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and to our listeners, as always, please like and subscribe. Let us know how we're doing, and then if you want to reach out and let us know who we should have on the show next, so that way we keep the content relative to what you want, I'd really appreciate that. And with that, we'll sign it off for